Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 105-99, their third straight win of the season. They improved to 32-19, remain in a tie with the Houston Rockets for the number 4 spot in the West, but are technically number 5 due to the tiebreaker. Also improved to 5-4 without Luka Doncic this season, which was something I was surprised by when I heard that after the game. But they have found ways to win without their stars this season, and that was the story of this game. I got a root canal yesterday, and that was less painful than watching that first half. Neither team cracked 30 points by the halfway point of the second quarter. They barely got to 40. It was some old school, late 90s, early 2000s basketball, 42-41 at the half. LA was actually down, but then they opened the second half with some momentum because Draymond Green got a technical foul going into intermission. So Austin hit the technical free throw to tie the game to start the third quarter. Then LeBron exploded with 12 points as part of a big Lakers run to open the second half that ultimately created distance for them, and they did not relinquish it. Golden State had several runs to get it within 3 points, 5 points here and there, but LA kept them at bay and was able to pull this one out. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. We got a lot to touch on. We had a pregame press conference with Rob Pelinka. We also have injury updates on Luka Doncic and Deandre Ayton, Luke Kennard, and the first impressions with his game, and Maxi Kleber, Lakers deadline acquisition. I know that's a running bit with the Lakers. Anytime they don't make a move or don't make a big move, it's sort of like the acquisition is the player that's coming back from injury. You could also argue Austin Reeves, but this version of Maxi Kleber we've seen the last couple games he's been something, and it's been impressive to behold. But with all that said, let's get into the game here. Buha's big picture is Rob Pelinka speaks on the state of the Lakers. So Rob Pelinka spoke with the Lakers beat reporters before the game. Unfortunately, I was not part of that. I was not even aware that it was happening. This is where, one of the downsides of no longer being a beat reporter is sometimes they will have media availabilities that are beat writers only. But that said, I did get access to the press conference. And it was about 9 minutes long. And there was a series of questions asked about the trade deadline, the buyout market, the upcoming offseason, the influence of Mark Walter and the Dodgers leadership group. So wanted to touch on some of the things that Rob said. And I thought that was ultimately the biggest thing to take away from this game. Like, I am going to be touching on Luke Kennard and Maxi Kleber's plays. I'm going to be touching on, I'm going to be touching on some of the injury updates and stuff. But for me, the big picture thing was Rob addressing the media and speaking about the deadline and the future for the first time since Media Day. So spark notes here. Rob talked about the importance of adding shooting and gravity to the Lakers offense, and said that he believes Luke Kennard is the best shooter in the NBA, and that is borne out by his numbers, and that he thinks that him playing off of the 3 stars is going to do wonders for the Lakers offense. He pitched a big 3 plus Luke plus Rui small ball group that I was like, I get the thinking. He was like, we could go like an all shooting small ball lineup. I don't think that group could guard the Brooklyn Nets, let alone any serious playoff team. So I have my reservations about that potential group. Like the Lakers have to figure out the big 3 minutes in general, but adding in a couple of shooters who are not plus defenders. I think they got to balance that out. But that aside, like that was pretty much the Luke Kennard part of it, was that Rob felt they were being opportunistic with the ability to add a high-level shooter to the offense. He also talked about the Lakers having several other trade opportunities that they decided to pass on. He said they were aggressive at the deadline, had a bunch of conversations with different teams about different players, had a few deals they got close to, and ultimately decided to pass on. Reading between the lines here, I do wonder, and this is pure speculation, so please do not aggregate me on this, but I do wonder if he was maybe hinting at the Andrew Wiggins move, or if there was maybe some other moves out there that were more like win now moves, I would say, right? Because Wiggins is, like he said, there were deals that they could have done that would have improved them in the short term, but the long-term vision of what this group is trying to do, it wasn't necessarily aligned with. So I feel like Wiggins is sort of the threshold there in terms of a guy who more on the win now side, but you could argue also has some future upside. He's only 31, is still playing at a relatively high level for a role player. So that's just like, I wonder how close or if that was possible at all. But that would have required almost certainly the Lakers giving up that first round pick. So that's where I think the Lakers, you could argue, were smart to not include that. But I thought that was interesting that he shared that the Lakers were close on several deals that they ultimately didn't do. Then said the big thing with, like, one question he was asked, what was like, how did you judge this team based on how many injuries you guys have had? Like, how were you able to suss out what you felt you guys needed, how good you believe you guys are? And he said that he didn't want to blame the injuries on the season, or like how, how things have gone at times, or just whether they wanted to make a move or not. But he did note that obviously the big thing for the Lakers this year has been not having the big three for that many games together. They've only played 10 games together. The Lakers are now 7-3 in those games since, including the last couple that Austin returned for and before Luka went out. So he said that's been like the big theme of this first 50 games of the season, was that he feels like the Lakers haven't really been able to see how good they are because the big three hasn't been there, but that he is optimistic that the final 30 games of the season, they will get healthy, those guys will play together, and he thinks this group has a really high ceiling together. Then as for the buyout market, he said that the Lakers will likely sign a 15th player, or he said, quote, probably will likely fill it about the 15th roster spot, the roster opening. Did note that they're having multiple conversations with multiple players right now. So that is something to note. And I think the more I've thought about it, the clear guy who I think this group could need is Haywood Highsmith. I think they need another defensive minded player who has some offensive upside. And I think Haywood Highsmith is not like a scorer, obviously, but he is someone who has shot between 38 and 40% the last couple of seasons he's played in. And I think having another guy out there, like the Lakers are still playing whack-a-mole to an extent in terms of having defensive-minded guys who are inconsistent offensive contributors, offensive-minded guys who are inconsistent defensive contributors. And if they can find a guy who sort of blends the two, that would be a useful piece in the rotation, in my opinion. So noted that at some, like, did not give a range in terms of when they might potentially address that position, but said it's something that they are currently working through. And then as for the offseason, he said that the Lakers want optionality to sign players, to keep their own players, and to trade for players that are potentially available from teams that are looking to shed salary due to apron-related moves. So he said a big thing has been studying the apron and trying to stay under, or studying the new CBA, studying the aprons, trying to stay under the second apron, and ideally even the first apron, and that we are starting to see some cost-cutting moves from teams, and that he anticipates there will be more cost-cutting moves from teams in the summer that the Lakers can benefit from. So that's something that I talked about back at the trade deadline show in terms of the Lakers' plan for this offseason. In terms of what I've heard, it's been the Lakers are optimistic that there will be teams that have to shed some salary they're either rebuilding or it's even good teams. Like we've talked about it, OKC with Isaiah Hartenstein and Lou Dort both having team options. That could be a situation where one of those guys is available. Now, will they trade them to the Lakers? Will the Lakers potentially have to overpay? That's an entirely different conversation here. But the Lakers are confident that with different teams having extensions kicking in and different teams going in different directions, there will be situations that arise where, because the Lakers have cap space, they can acquire players into their cap space. Those teams, and that's a big advantage here, right? Because if you are trying to trade Lou Dort or Isaiah Hartenstein or whoever, if that team doesn't have the flexibility to take on that contract, they probably have to send something back to you. And then if you're OKC, you're obviously trying to find the gap in terms of the outgoing salary versus the incoming salary that you're comfortable with. Whereas the Lakers can be a bit of a dumping ground for some of these teams that need to shed money. So that, my understanding, is part of the Lakers' approach this summer. But again, also mentioning signing players, which, to be honest, the free agent class is pretty bleak. I don't really see, like, especially the unrestricted free agent class. I don't even know if there's like a player I would want the Lakers to sign as a starter. I think it's just the restricted free agents. And then we'll see if the Lakers can even land any of those guys. Then also, again, keeping their own players. And that said, they haven't made any decisions yet about the offseason moves in terms of retaining their own players or certain guys they're targeting or whatnot. So make of that what you will. And then again, reiterated that he thinks we still don't know how good this Lakers team is, and that he's excited to see what they could do the rest of the season. And then the final thing, and I think a really big thing that is already making the rounds in terms of it's been written about, it's been tweeted out, it's been aggregated, is that they are going to be working closely with Mark Walter, with Andrew Friedman, with the Dodgers leadership that has already been advising the Lakers to do their best to replicate the front office build and the success that the Dodgers have had. And of course, there are the differences with the salary cap, and it's unlikely that the Lakers are able to replicate that in one offseason, right? But he did say that they are looking to mirror and learn from and build a lot of what the Dodgers have built. And that includes revamping the front office and adding new pieces in every department. And that's something I've talked about, that the Lakers, my understanding of how this is going to go is they're going to be targeting the best of the best, but also targeting, it's going to be quantity and quality, right? So they need more bodies in general, but they also need better bodies. And I think it's going to be that balance of adding better pieces, poaching pieces from other teams, but also adding more of a volume where it's not just, this guy replaces this guy. It's like these three guys replace this one guy, and like increasing the overall depth of the front office. Specifically, he mentioned the draft system, the farm system that the Dodgers have as being something he wants to replicate and learn from them in terms of how they've built out their draft process. Also, just no expense being spared now under Mark Walter with the front office and how they build that out. But I think the key thing, or one of the key things here, was that he said twice that Jeannie and I, as in Jeannie and Rob, are leading the efforts to bolster the front office, all the offseason moves. Like they are consulting Mark Walter, and they will have his support and his blessing on the decisions that they make. And they are consulting the Dodgers leadership. But he made it clear twice with two separate answers that Jeannie and Rob are the two people in charge here in terms of the ultimate decision. So how much of that is semantics versus, I don't know, right? I think that dynamic is still being formed right now, but I thought that was important to note, was that he clarified that nothing is changing in that regard, that ultimately Jeannie and Rob are still the two head honchos, so to speak. That was all the notes I took from the 9-minute press conference. My quick thoughts, I understand the logic behind trading for Luke Kennard. I support the move, and I will be touching on Luke's first impressions in a little bit. I understand the offseason plan. I think the free agent class, I think is going to be a little tough for them to land some difference makers there. I think that the keeping their own players is smart to a degree, but I don't think they should just run this group back. I think they need, like, as I've thought more about the ideal offseason for the Lakers, I think it's even keeping guys like, if it's keeping guys like Rui and DA and Marcus and even Luke, okay, but I think all of those guys should be in bench roles and in smaller roles. And the Lakers, if they end up moving on from LeBron, which it still is up in the air, they need to split that salary and the additional salary they have from other guys leaving potentially as well into multiple starters. I think that's the key for me with the Lakers, like reshaping this roster, is I think they have a lot of nice pieces, that they have some nice players, but they're all bench players. And with the exception of the big three, I think basically everybody in the rotation is a bench caliber player. They need to, and again, we just don't know what's going to happen with LeBron yet, but if we assume LeBron is either retiring or leaving, there's 3 open starting spots that I think they need to address, be it in free agency or on the trade market. So I think that is the task at hand. I think if some of these guys are opting in with the player options or maybe re-signing on shorter team-friendly deals, that's okay. But I think the key has to be plugging in 2 to 3 starters, because I think that right now continues to be the biggest difference between the Lakers roster and the other top rosters in the West, is that I've said it before, but this whole conversation about Marcus versus Jake versus Rui, those guys aren't starting on any of the other top 5 teams in the West. And they're more, some of them probably not even the 6th man on those teams, more so like 7th, 8th, 9th men. I think that's where the Lakers need to be aspiring to, is building out. If you want to retain some continuity, retain some of these guys, that's okay. But they need to be shifted into more appropriate roles, and you need to go get actual starting level talent moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I think that was it. It was interesting to hear the Dodgers stuff and how this all plays out with the front office, and if they can make any of these changes potentially before the end of the season, or if it's all going to be in the offseason. But a lot to be encouraged by, especially with the no expense spared, because we know the Lakers have been operating with something of a budget here over the last 12, 13 years or so, and have not always they have spared some expenses, we'll say, and having this new ownership, that I think that's going to be a key in really developing this franchise and taking it to the next level. Back to the game, because I just really wanted to touch on that. I thought that was a really important development that Rob spoke to the media. So again, Lakers win 105-99. They're down 42-41 at the half, but then they erupt for 38 points in the third quarter, and they ultimately tread water. They actually get outscored 28-26 in the fourth, but that includes a garbage time late 3 from Golden State. So really outscored them 26-25. Say a decent win for the Lakers. Like we haven't gotten too much into who is available, but of course, Jimmy Butler out for the season on the Golden State side. No Steph Curry tonight on the Golden State side. So 2 of their 3 best players are out already. I think this is a team, at least on paper, the Lakers are better than, but you take away 2 of their 3 best players, they are clearly a depleted group. I think Colin Cowherd tweeted out, it's good to see the Lakers beat the Santa Cruz Warriors. And like, there was a little bit of an element to that, right? Of if you're looking at who the Warriors have out there, and it was not the best group of guys. But one thing I've been adamant about, and I thought we really saw this play out more so in the first half, but even it stretches of the second half, I don't think like the healthy version of the Warriors are a good matchup for the Lakers. I think this dates back to last season when we saw in that March game, they came into LA and just kicked the Lakers' ass, and then really have beat them in the preseason, beat them to open the season. And I just think the ball movement, the cutting, the speed, the style of offense. They really forced the Lakers into the blender, into multiple rotations, and it's having to cover the 3-point line, but also having to box out 3 to 4 crashers on every possession. So you saw, 10 offensive rebounds for the Warriors, despite being at a major size disadvantage against the Lakers. They were beating them to 50-50 balls all night, and they took 51 three-pointers. They took nearly double the amount of threes as the Lakers, only made 14 of them, shot 27%. That was a big swing factor in tonight's game. But also they switch a ton. And the two types of coverages the Lakers have struggled the most against this season are switching and drop coverage. If you can run a successful drop coverage against the Lakers, we've seen the Suns do it. We've seen the Spurs do it. The Thunder to a degree. But like that's one style. But then the switching style is if you switch against the Lakers and you can stay in front of them, which the Warriors have very switchable defenders, it basically just forces LA into side-to-side actions that don't really penetrate the defense, and then often into late shot clock possessions or settling for contested jumpers, which we saw a ton of in that first half. A lot of turnovers as well. LA had 13 of their 22 turnovers in the first half. It's incredible. Like that alone, that's almost the stat of the night is the Lakers had 22 turnovers and won this game. But in terms of notable performers, we have to start with LeBron. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. An interesting game for LeBron because I don't think he had a great game by any means, because you look at the 6 for 17 shooting, very inefficient, 2 for 7 on threes, also 7 turnovers. So nearly, that just too high for LeBron, and continues to have some of these turnovers where he's just coughing the ball up or losing his handle. Like his handle's just been very loose lately. And also just some of the passing reads he's been making, just miscommunications between him and his teammates in terms of thinking of players maybe cutting or flaring out or whatnot, and then sending the ball where there is no one. But so like that's where like we could look at the efficiency and not the best or most efficient performance from him. However, he single-handedly swung this game to open the third quarter. The energy that he came out with, he put the team on his back. And so he comes off of a DHO into a 3 at the top of the key, then has a couple of bully ball drives against Pat Spencer where he gets him for and ones, makes the free throws, and then has another 3. So in this sequence where Golden State's turning the ball over, they're not really in an offensive rhythm. The Lakers just drop an avalanche on them offensively, at least by the standards of this game. They nearly matched their first half total in the third quarter alone, right? So they had 41 in the first half, scored 38 in the third quarter. LeBron had 12 in the third quarter. Only 1 point in the fourth, was more of a facilitator in the fourth. I will note, like looking at LeBron's numbers, he has funk is a little bit too strong of a word, but if you go like the last time he scored over 25 points was January 15th against Charlotte. So it's been 12 straight games under 25 or fewer points for LeBron. After like that preceding stretch, he had 29 versus Charlotte, 31 versus Atlanta, 22 versus Sacramento, 26 versus Milwaukee, 30 versus New Orleans, 26-31. Like he had a stretch there of 7 games where 6 of the 7 he had more than 25 points, and then has cooled off a little bit. I think it's a lot of it's been the jumper. The jumper has not been falling over this stretch of 12 games. He's only made 2 threes 3 times. Otherwise has been 1 3 or 0 threes. And the 3-point volume has decreased as he's been struggling a little bit with the jumper. But I think the jumper has not quite been what we're accustomed to with LeBron. And I think that's like the final element for him is figuring out, or not figuring out, but like kind of getting back to the way he was shooting last season. But I think tonight, like he loves playing the Warriors. He loves the bully ball against them. And there was certainly like that stretch there of the 12 points first few minutes of the third completely flipped this game. Lakers took the lead and never gave it up. Then we get to Austin Reeves came off the bench again, was on a 25-minute minutes restriction, only played 24 minutes, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and a block. 5 for 10 shooting, 6 for 7 at the free throw line, 0 for 2 on threes, and had 5 turnovers. Certainly not the game that he had against Philly, but I would say a better game than he had against Brooklyn. So this was somewhere in the middle of those two games. I think Austin is still shaking off like a little bit of rust offensively, but the playmaking has returned. I mean, this was he had 3 assists over the 2 previous games, 8 assists tonight. So the Warriors have pretty good perimeter defenders when you look at D'Anthony Melton or Moses Moody or Gary Payton II. Even Pajemski is a solid defender. So they're able to switch and keep the ball in front. And then on top of that, they were throwing a lot of doubles and traps at Austin periodically. So I thought Austin managed that well. Would like to see him probably be a little bit more aggressive in a game like this where the Lakers are so shorthanded with no Luka. As an aside, for those who have been clamoring that the Lakers offense is somehow better without Luka, despite the numbers suggesting that that is not the case at all, and Luka leading the team in offensive on-off differential, I think tonight's a nice reminder that the Lakers offense is not better without Luka Doncic. I understand some people don't like the aesthetic of his play and don't like the aesthetic of Luka ball sometimes, but the Lakers offense was in the mud for a majority of tonight's game. And part of that's on the coaching staff and some of the stuff that they're running, and they need to be better with that. They need to be sharper with that. But Lakers clearly missed Luka Doncic tonight by a lot. But Austin, that solid game, but still, I think is getting into his rhythm, and I don't think is quite back to, like, Philly game aside, I don't think is quite back to who he was, and that's going to take a little bit of time. Then we get into some of the bright spots off the bench, because Jared Vanderbilt, I thought, had an incredible game, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. He hit a couple of threes. It's funny. I was talking to someone and I looked it up before the game, and it feels like Vando's been shooting the ball better, but he's actually shooting, or entering tonight, he was shooting 28.8% on corner threes, which is his worst corner 3 percentage in 4 years. But I think that the difference with Vando, and after tonight, I'm sure that'll go back up, or above 30%, maybe 30%, 31%, whatever, hitting a couple. But like, I think that the key with Vando has been, it feels like he's making more of those because he's taking so many of them, and the increase in volume and the increase in aggression, I think, especially if he makes the first one like he did tonight, that leads defenses to defend him slightly differently, and you're starting to see defenses respect him more. And he had to pump and drive for a dunk, which you just don't see that often from Vando. So I thought Vando, like, offensively was getting to the free throw line with the cutting and getting out in transition, and also just being a threat to attack off closeouts. But then the rebounding with the 8 rebounds, 3 stocks, was everywhere defensively, switching across multiple positions, playing passing lanes, and setting a tone. Like, he just does all these little things of he'll pressure the ball handler, like, especially if there's one guy, like, the inbounder has the ball, maybe the Lakers just scored or something, and there's one guy ready to catch the inbounds pass. Vando will go pressure that guy and then force someone else to run from like half court or beyond to go get that ball. And that's just like a little small thing that Vando does consistently. Marcus will sometimes do, but like those little things, I think are really important for a defense like the Lakers, that any little advantage you can get, any way to disrupt or just make the opponent uncomfortable, I think that's really important. So Vando, I think, has been a really big part of some of these zone looks, some of the small ball success that the Lakers have had recently. And this is some of the best basketball he's played, I think, all season. Then Luke Kennard, I'm going to save for one of my takeaways, but 10 points, 4-7 shooting, 2 for 4 on threes, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal, a couple turnovers as well. Maxi Kleber, I'm also going to save 5.7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 2 for 3 field goals. Missed his only 3, but led the team in plus minus. LA was plus 12 in his 28 minutes. Also, second straight game, he led the center group in minutes, and it was deserved. He was the best center for LA. He's been the best center the last couple games. Then going back to the starting group, Rui was awesome tonight, hit so many big shots. And you saw just like between Rui and Luke and having like the threats out there, what that does for LA's offense. But Rui, 18 points on 7 of 10 shooting, 4 for 5 on threes, had a nice block on, it was on Pajemski, I believe. And so like he has been playing well, and he got the start with no Luka, and Austin still on a minutes restriction. JJ decided to keep Austin off of the bench, and then Jackson returned. He apologized about the suspension and the tripping the mascot. He said the mascot stepped on his foot while he was warming up and stretching, so he decided to lash out, and we saw the consequences of that. But I thought Jackson was fine tonight. I thought he was fine. 6 points, 4 rebounds, a steal, and a block. Had some nice defensive moments, but this is not. I think this was more of a switching small ball type game for LA, especially with Deandre Ayton out, who was a late scratch with right knee soreness. And I think Maxi was the right call. In terms of stat of the night, we're going to continue with this stocks trend because I've been really impressed with the Lakers defense here. Another game, they hold their opponent to under 100 points. So 17 stocks tonight, 7 steals, 10 blocks. And on the blocks front, I think that was even more important. Like 10 blocks is a big number for this group. And every player, they played 9 guys tonight. 8 of the 9 players had at least 1 block. Luke Kennard was the one guy who did not get a block, but he did have a steal. So the defensive activity from either the switching and switching 1 through 5 or the 2-3 zone that the Lakers have been playing, just some good defensive engagement from LA recently here. And we said it last show, but going into tonight, LA was 7-3 in their past 10 games, now 8-3 over their past 11, but they were 8th in offense and 11th in defense over that stretch. So this has been their best two-way stretch of the season. They are rounding into form at the right time. I think there's 2 things we need to see from this group as the season progresses. One, they need to get and stay healthy, which seems to just be impossible for them, right? But that's what we would like to see. Like, get Luka back, get DA back, get everyone healthy and stay healthy. See if they can play like the final 25 games of the season healthy. Then I would like to see, give me like 2 or 3 statement wins against healthy opponents, right? Because they got OKC coming up on Monday. As of right now, it looks like OKC will be without Shea, J-Dub, Alex Caruso, and AJ Mitchell. Maybe Caruso or Mitchell is back for that, but that's their 2 best players. 2 really important bench pieces. They've still been playing well and nearly beating teams and they nearly beat Houston today. So it's going to be a challenge for LA, but like I want to see them beat the full health, the fully healthy OKC team. San Antonio on Tuesday, assuming they don't suffer any injuries between now and then, will be a real test. It's second night of a back-to-back, and it's a pretty healthy San Antonio team. So that would be a statement win opportunity. But I would like to see a couple statement wins of like beat OKC, healthy, beat San Antonio, beat Houston, beat Minnesota, beat Denver, like beat a couple of those teams healthy. Maybe you're going to get another shot against New York, going to get another shot against Detroit, beat one of those teams. And like, if they could have a few of these statement wins against healthy teams and whether they're healthy or not, and then also get healthy, like that, I think we'll have the Lakers trending in the right direction because they're winning games again, right? It had been a little bit there of they started the season 15-4. They are now 17-15 since then. So they are finally on the positive side of the ledger in terms of this long stretch they had of being under 500. So things are trending in the right direction. I just want to see them get healthy and then beat some good teams fully healthy. And that to me will have them in a good spot, at least in the first round. Then we'll go through the 3 takeaways relatively quickly here before we get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1 is just injury updates on Luka Doncic and Deandre Ayton. So both JJ Redick and Rob Pelinka said that Luka is day-to-day with a mild hamstring strain. Now, hamstring strains are in nature mild. So like, I mean, day-to-day, typically a hamstring strain, you're out at least a week or 2. It's not really like a day-to-day injury. So I feel like if they listed it as like hamstring soreness or leg soreness, like they originally did it, that would be one thing, but hamstring strain does indicate potentially a little bit of a longer absence. But I would suspect Luka's going to miss at least one more game, if not that, back to back, and then potentially return Thursday. Although I think at that point, if he's going to miss that amount of games, like just keep him out through the All-Star break, potentially have him miss the All-Star game. That's obviously his call if he wants to play in that or not. Totally understand based on, I mean, he led the fan voting right now, is the most popular player in the NBA. It's understandable if he wants to play in that. That's a big moment for him. But if he, whether he does or doesn't, I think keeping him out until post All-Star break is probably the right move. But Luka hates missing time. Both JJ and Rob referenced that. That's been a thing that I've talked about. Like Luka really hates missing time. So I would not be surprised if he somehow returns before the All-Star break. But I think the smart move here is to think big picture and likely keep him out. Then really odd situation with DeAndre Ayton because he was a late scratch 15 minutes before tip-off. And the Lakers held out their starting lineup until it was announced that he was out. And then they showed that Jackson Hayes was going to be starting, but he's dealing with some swelling in his knee. This has been an on and off again thing for DA. So that's a little concerning. JJ said it's not too serious and he is day to day moving forward. But I also wonder how this game would have gone differently potentially because I think there's a alternate universe where DA plays and Jackson's the primary backup and Maxi potentially doesn't even play because the Lakers would have had 10 rotation guys, right? And JJ prefers 9. So I wonder how this game goes because remember, DA did not have a good game against Golden State opening night of the season. A lot of fans were upset with him. That was the first real impression with him and he did not play well, has not been playing well lately. So I think it might have actually worked out for LA in an odd way that this was not, I think, a great matchup for him based on their style of play. And then takeaway number 2, Luke Kennard first impressions. Let's get into it. So Luke finishes 10 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 4 for 7 shooting, 2 for 4 on threes, had a couple turnovers and a couple of fouls. LA was +4 in his 26 minutes. So he was second or among the bench players in minutes. He played more than Austin because Austin is on the minutes restriction, but just right there under Maxi, played more than Jackson, played nearly as much as Jake and Rui. So I think this was a solid debut for Luke Kennard. I mean, those who've been following the NBA know who Luke Kennard is. You know what he does and what he brings. And I think we saw a lot of that tonight. He is basically automatic when open. By my count, he went 2 for 3 on his wide open catch and shoot threes tonight. So that's progress compared to what the Lakers have had recently with the non Rui shooters. When he does drive and when he's run off the line, he is looking to pass more than he is looking to score. He did have one drive and he had a nice change of hand in while he was gathering, switching from his left to his right. And I thought that, that was a nice move. Also had a nice reverse, but I think it's clear, especially in comparison to Gabe, there is just a clear fit there and a clear need that he resolves within the Lakers offense. And really, I think he's functioning as what the Lakers had initially wanted Dalton Knecht to be. It's just Dalton Knecht has not been able to, especially in comparison to last season, the shooting percentage has just fallen off. And he is not the same shooter he was last season. And even last season, there was some tail off in the second half of the year. So we're seeing now, JJ only ran a couple plays for him. There was, one really nice pin in flare for, I think they were running like a pick and roll on the right side. Austin gets downhill. Maxi sets a pin in flare for Luke Kennard. Austin finds him in the corner and Luke cashes it. There was a broken play, like the Lakers missed a shot, loose ball. They end up saving it and then find Luke Kennard for 3 on the left wing. He hit his first shot. But I thought it's a pretty low bar for him to clear in terms of being the Lakers' best shooter or second best shooter. You know, he and Rui will probably trade that honor depending on the night. And but on paper, he's their best shooter. And I think we still are barely scratching the surface of what he can do. And he's still learning the playbook. He's still learning the terminology. But I thought it was a good first impression from him. And I thought he held up fairly well defensively. Like, he's not a stopper. And a lot of that first shift or the first half when he played, they were in zone. And I think it's an easier ask, especially on a defensive liability, to just sort of be in an area and like that's why you play zone, because you don't trust your man-to-man defense, your rotations, etc. And that's why the Lakers have been leading on it. But I thought in the second half, he was still like fine. There were a few possessions where they tried to attack him with some off-ball screens. Guy Santos got an and one over him on a line drive. Like, you saw some of the cracks within. He is a limited defender. There's just no way around it. But I think he's a smart defender. I think he is someone who has high awareness. So he's not really going to get like beat backdoor or have some of these, we'll say, low IQ defensive mistakes that some of the Lakers defenders could have. So he is like tuned in. And of course, like first impression, first game, you're also going to see a more locked in version of him than maybe like the average game. But I think in general, he's a pretty smart player and he's pretty active and engaged on that end. There just are some physical limitations there with him being 6'4", 6'5", and like he is quick, he's fast. Like you'll see that, but he doesn't have like the quick twitch and also doesn't have the strength. But I just thought a really solid debut from him, and the Lakers were able to run some actions with him that, again, they've tried to run with Gabe Vincent or Dalton Connect in the past, and Luke Kennard is just in a different zip code as a shooter. And I think I don't ultimately know what his role is going to be once Austin's off the minutes restriction and once Luka is back. That's a lot of backcourt minutes that are going to be impacted, but he was, again, he closed the game tonight. Lakers went small or smallish with Maxi, and I mean, there's different versions of it, but Maxi, LeBron, Vando, Austin, and Marcus and Luke were like the 6 guys that, depending on the substitution pattern, 5 of those 6 were out there. And then third and final takeaway before we get into the Q&A. I said it at the top, but Maxi Kleber, this version of Maxi feels like a deadline acquisition for the Lakers. I say that partly in jest, but like in all seriousness, the last 2 games I think have arguably been Maxi's 2 best games as a Laker. And there's just so many things that he does that do not show up in the box score and only show up if you're specifically watching Maxi, or if you're watching back possessions, or if you just have to be watching him with a close eye. But I think the biggest thing, there's been 2 huge things here, actually. One is the screening. He's an incredible screener, and I think that's something that we've seen it with a lot of the off-ball actions. The Lakers are running a lot more off-ball actions these past couple games with Maxi as the screener, and he's just decking dudes and getting Rui open and Luke open and even Vando open, and like whoever they're running an off-ball action for or as like a decoy, Maxi as the screener is getting that player open. And I talked about it last stream. It'll be like the backcourt screens that he sets that create that separation for the ball handler to get some momentum downhill. But if he's screening on the ball as either a roller or a popper, he's also had success there. So he's just brought this like element of IQ and awareness and fundamentals that I don't think is always present at the center position between DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes. And I think the screening, like I don't think it's close. I think it's been not just these last couple games. It's been like that's probably been Maxi's best thing, at least offensively for LA this season, has been the screening, and just his caliber of screening. I think it's top notch, especially on this roster. Then I think the other thing has been the switching and his ability to, like, LA can go one through five switching with Maxi on the floor, and he's keeping guards in front of him, excuse me, or he's funneling them to the spots on the floor that the Lakers want him to, and where the help is. So I think those two simple things, like, he's not the lob threat that Jackson is. He doesn't have the touch in the paint or in the post that DA has, and he's not the rebounder that DA is, and he's not maybe the vertical threat defensively that Jackson is. But the switching has been huge for the way that the Lakers are trying to defend. I talked about it last game that they've been upping the switching 1 through 5 specifically, because they've switched 1 through 4 already at the highest rate in the league, but now they're switching even more 1 through 5. And then the screening again has been an underrated wrinkle, but we've even seen like some finishes. He's getting like a dunk or two per game. The rebounding, tipping the ball out, or just coming down with it in traffic. I think there's like an element of toughness with Maxi, where we've talked about the Lakers needing a more like physical, bruising, tough big man, and he's provided that. And then I think the IQ overall, he's just a really smart player who I think is, like, I just think sees the game at a high level and does all these little things that really add up to the Lakers winning his minutes. And I don't think it's a surprise that the last couple of games, he's been the best center on the floor, and he's led the team in plus minus. So we'll see how long he can keep this up physically, because I do think there's an element here of he's just looked better physically as well. He's been quicker. He's been more athletic. He's just been more of a force that I don't think he was physically capable of being earlier in the season. So I don't know if he could stay healthy. I don't know what type of workload he can really maintain the rest of the way, but I'm not saying he's going to start. I'm not saying he's even going to be a rotation fixture, but with how he's playing, I think you have to ride this out and just see where it goes. And it might be more of a matchup based thing, especially against a team like Golden State that plays small, that plays fast, that is constant moving. That's when I think you need more of that switching, pitch. And I think Maxi is their best screener among the three centers, and also the best at switching and corralling ball handlers. So I think Maxi has been instrumental in the last couple of wins, and I don't think they win either of those two games without him. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from Ink Relay. Thank you for the super chat. What Rob said about being aggressive by not jumping on opportunities that would crash in the long run. So to reiterate here, Rob said that the Lakers were aggressive in terms of their conversations with teams and pursuing different players, but he ultimately passed on certain opportunities, certain deals. He said there was a few deals they got close on, and he decided not to go through with them because they would likely help the Lakers in the short run, but compromise them in the long run. And now it's difficult to say or to assess what those deals were, right? And what, like, how we feel about them. Like, I think Andrew Wiggins, you can make a case for trading for Wiggins. You can make a case against trading for Wiggins. I was more on the side of trading for Wiggins because I think people are acting like he's ancient at 31 and is about to hit some wall that I think is still pretty physically gifted and athletic, and he's been shooting the ball well the last couple of years. And like I think he's still a clear positive on both sides of the basketball. Like, he's Miami's primary wing stopper. Davion Mitchell is the primary backcourt stopper. Andrew Wiggins guards the big wings, and like that's an area that I think the Lakers can be better with. So depending on the price, obviously, it's hard to say without knowing. Like, would Rui have been in that? Could they have done it without Rui? I don't know the answer to that, but it's difficult to have a real reaction to this without knowing what deals were actually on the table. But taking that at face value, he said that they could have made some short-term improvements that would have cost them in the long run. So again, I don't know what that is, and it's hard to. Okay, so I see. I missed this completely because so they signed Kobe Bufkin to a 2-year contract. All right. So the Lakers have their 15th player. Sorry, when I'm going, I got my notes here and I'm locked in, right? So I completely missed that, but thank you to Denny and Arno the Capo for noting that. So I guess I'll react quickly to this. It is a 2-year deal, team option for next year. I like Kobe Bufkin. I was advocating for them to at least make him a 2-way, if not sign him to another 10-day and like continue to evaluate him. I didn't love the way they handled that initial 10-day contract, but he is someone who I think we've seen the potential with South Bay. I mean, he just had a game 41, 8-8. I don't think he's been able to show that yet with the Lakers from an offensive perspective, but I was really impressed with his defense, right? Because on film, his offense stands out more than his defense, but the couple games he played in, I thought he was pressuring the ball, playing passing lanes, and being like almost like a rangy point of attack defender in like a point guard or shooting guard's body that the Lakers need ball pressure. And he stood out in that regard. Then he also, I think about like that Portland game, he had a couple nice drives. And I think comparing him to just some of the Lakers' other younger options, whether it's a Bronny or a Nick Smith or a Dalton, there's just like a fluidity that he has that I think in his drives and whatnot, that I think that there's just a lot of untapped potential there. So I'm surprised that this happened right now, but I like it. Like the only thing I wonder about is the potential opportunity cost with a guy like a Haywood Highsmith or whoever else shakes loose on the buyout market. And with how Maxi's been playing, we talked about like Maxi's maybe the one guy you could argue that could be waived. I don't see that, especially with the last couple of games. Like unless he gets injured or something, I think he's close with Luka. He's been playing well. I know 2 games, but like I just don't see them being like, all right, Maxi, you're off the team. You know, they didn't trade him at the deadline. So it feels like this might just end up being the Lakers roster, which at that point, I still think they're like a wing short of where they need to be, at least a wing, if not a couple wings. But I do like Kobe Bufkin, and I am excited to dive into this a little bit more once I wrap. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Also, Intel is wild. I do not see a question here, but I appreciate the super chat. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Can't stand Cam comparing Luka era to Kobe era when building a team now is way harder. Now as role players are way harder to get and CBA is more restrictive. Yeah. Andy and I, for those who did not listen to it, I thought we had a really fun conversation on my last show yesterday afternoon. And we had a nice back and forth. And like one of the things I like about Andy, especially just in comparison to most of my other guests that I have, is that we kind of get into it a little bit and we have our disagreements and we have our back and forth. And I think it leads to an interesting conversation where I would say majority of the people I have on, like we see eye to eye on a lot of things, or maybe they don't want to test me. Like, I don't know here. I'm just, thinking through it, but Andy and I like got into it on several things and we're pushing back against each other. And I thought it was a healthy and fun conversation and just some opposite viewpoints on different things with how the Lakers have operated, how they've built things to this point. I wasn't able to flesh this out because he did make that point a couple times in terms of comparing the Luka era to the Kobe era. But to your point, Kevin, like I agree with you. I'm on your side of this, and I did express a little bit of that within the conversation, but we were talking about so many things it was hard to like address every point. But yeah, I don't think you can compare team building now to team building 20 years ago. And my point to a degree was that I was arguing for more urgency and stating that we both agreed that we weren't very confident in LA's ability to execute everything that they need to execute in one offseason. It's probably going to be multiple transaction cycles of like 2026 offseason, potentially 2027 deadline, and then potentially even 2027 offseason. So we're talking about like 2 to 3 transaction cycles and another season where LA's maybe not fielding the most competitive, like best roster or a roster that can compete with OKC or San Antonio or whoever. And my point was like, I just think it's going to be unfortunate if we're in the summer of 2027 and you're 2.5 years into the Luka era and you're like, maybe you have like one first round advancement. Maybe like this year they lose in the first round, next year they lose in the second round. And it's like, all right, you've had 3 postseasons with Luka. You've gotten out of the first round once. You haven't gotten past the second round yet. And I think that's like a relatively realistic outcome here for the next couple of seasons based on the roster constraints that the Lakers currently have. And then his point was comparing it to the Kobe era after Shaq left and saying like, they had 04, 05 into 07, 08, and it was like a multi-year build to get to that. But I do agree with you, Kevin, that I just think it's way harder I think it's apples to oranges. It's not a like for like comparison there. It's way harder to get players. Get good players. It's harder to keep good players. And just the CBA is very punitive, and roster building is, I think, far more difficult now than it was back 20 years ago. I guess the Lakers got their version of the Powell trade within getting Luka, right? Like different players and different caliber of players, but like the league lost their mind when the Lakers got Pau Gasol in 2008, and similar response to them getting Luka, but on an even bigger scale with social media and all that stuff. But I don't agree with that. That's one thing we disagreed on, but. We'll see. Because his point was like you're giving it more time for them to build out the roster. I just think you don't want to be trying to build a roster for like 2028 or 2029. I think they like have to do it this summer, and if they don't, I think that's a failure on their part. Devin notes Kobe Bufkin. Arno DiCapo notes Kobe Bufkin. I see that was a big thing. I appreciate you guys super chatting it. The Lakers, thank you for the super chat. Yo, Luke going to be different to Malik. Thoughts on him? Different players. Like both are really good shooters, right? Like Luke is in a even higher class of shooter than Malik, but Malik has got more off the dribble juice. He's more athletic. He's more of an above the rim, or at least like not as much of a ground bound finisher, we'll say, compared to Luke. Both are good mid-range shooters. So I think Malik is much more of an on-ball player than an off-ball player, at least in comparison to Luke, who's more of an off-ball player than an on-ball player. But they have similarities in that like Luke can play on the ball and Malik can play off the ball, right? But just different. Malik is more of a bucket getter, a scorer, like that is his, and he could do it at all 3 levels. Luke's finishing numbers have not, comparing like volume and efficiency, have not been necessarily great, but from the mid range and from 3, he is elite. He is one of the best shooters. I'm not going to go best shooter because I still give Steph an element of like Steph is the best shooter of all time, and I'm not off that, but Luke is, from an efficiency perspective, is in that conversation, if not just outright the best shooter efficiency wise. And they're just different, right? Like Malik he's got a better handle. I think he's a better passer, although Luke's passing is underrated. And again, I touched on that, but I thought he had some nice passes tonight. For what the Lakers need, they kind of need both player archetypes, because I'll say, like, for the people who want Cam Thomas, tonight was an example of why Cam Thomas could fit when the Lakers are shorthanded. I have my reservations about how he fits a fully healthy roster and if he could play in the biggest games and the biggest moments against a San Antonio or an OKC or Denver in like a 7-game series. But Luke is the off-ball shooter, the gravity, the movement guy that the Lakers need to start running more plays for. Malik is more, I think like 2 of the big 3 are off. Malik can play with one of them and then complement them as more of an on-ball shot creator, guy who could run pick and roll, ISO, etc. Also come off-ball actions. And so, I mean, there are some similarities with how they can attack and in just their range and like the multiple levels they could score from. But Luke is much more of a shooter and an off-ball threat. Malik can do both, but is more of an on-ball. I would say he's a pure hooper. He's a pure bucket getter, but he's also a really good shooter. Tan Man, thank you for the super chat. I feel like LeBron is dealing with his back still. That could be an element here. Again, like physically, he has just not, I feel like, looked like the same these last 2 to 3 weeks. And that's okay because he's dealing with to your point, I guess like technically, yes, he is dealing with the sciatica. To what degree, I don't know in terms of the way that he broke it down and explained it. Like this is something that's just going to flare up at different points of the season. He's just going to have to deal with at different points of the season. So that would make sense that maybe he's dealing with it a little bit more right now. I don't think he's going to share that or use that as an excuse, but certainly, yeah, I think he is still dealing with the back. Again, to what degree, I don't know. Arno says we signed Kobe 45 minutes ago. LOL. Another one from Tina. So yeah, I completely botched that. Sorry guys. I don't even have my phone, which is probably my fault here. But when I'm live with you guys, I'm locked in. I'm locked into our conversation here. AJ, thank you for the super. I see. Okay, now I'm seeing the text on my phone. My bad. My wife also texted me, you left your phone. My wife texted me, you left your phone in the bathroom and it's been going off. So I screwed that one up. My bad, guys. My bad. AJ, thank you for the super chat. Would it have been smarter to offer Kobe a 2-way instead of standard contract? No, if Lakers want to add someone who you cut, Dalton or Maxi. So I guess if we're talking like through the most pragmatic, practical approach here, I think it would have made more sense to sign him to another 10-day and see how he fits within this, because I would say my one like slight, now that I'm thinking through it a little bit more, my one slight like thing I don't love about this from like a position standpoint is that the Lakers, I mean, they technically swapped Gabe for Luke, right? But I mean, you already have, in terms of like backcourt players, and I'm looking at it more through like the offensive lens. You have Luka, Austin, Marcus, Luke. And I guess that's, well, Bronny and Dalton. You know, Dalton's a 2/3, so you could put him as a wing or as like a backcourt player, depending on how you view that. But like, let's just say for argument's sake, they have like 6 backcourt players. Then they have 3 centers in DA, Jackson, and Maxi. So that's 9. So then you have like 5 players sort of in like the wing forward mold of LeBron, Rui, Jake, Vando, and Adu is out. So I do feel like if we're sort of grouping the positions into those 3 buckets, you got the 3 centers. If we put Adu to the side, because he's out and I just don't see him playing a real rotation role at any point this season, as JJ has indicated multiple times, you got like 4 forward wings and then you got 6 guards, and now you're adding a 7th guard. And now technically, like Luka's a guard on offense, a forward on defense. Dalton could go either direction. So like you could argue that the buckets look a little bit different depending on how you want to look at it. But I would argue that they needed I would rather have Haywood Highsmith than Kobe Bufkin for the 15th spot. Now, can they get Haywood Highsmith? What shape is he in physically? He has not played this season. There are legitimate reasons to push back against potentially signing him. I understand that. But I would probably rather have a more like ready contributor, because I still think Kobe is more of a developmental piece, right? Like, I mean, he had some nice flashes and stretches in the games he played in, but he's far from a finished product. And I don't know how much he's actually going to be able to contribute to this year's roster. So, I mean, it's a team-friendly deal. You have the team option for next year. It's a low-risk situation, but there is a bit of an opportunity cost here, in my opinion, with like the options on the buyout market. And then if not, I think it's actually, to me, between Maxi and Bronny, because the downside with Dalton is is under contract next year. So you are going to have to eat. He's under contract for, I think it's 4.2 million or so. So it's not just, it's one thing to eat the money this year and just waive the guy and whatever. Like, anyone they waive, you'd be eating the money on this year. And they could do that. They are under the cap or under the first apron enough where they could waive someone. And I believe coming up here in the next like 2 weeks, sign a 15th player if they waive someone. The issue is Dalton's under contract for next year. So you're still on the books for that next year. And then I think he has a team option. I don't know off the top of my head how that would work in terms of like the second year salary, but Dalton's technically under contract for one more year. So you'd still have to pay that next year. You could stretch it, but now you're stretching it across multiple years. And it's like, it just becomes this thing that you probably just don't want to have on your cap sheet, potentially for like a 15th guy who might not even play, or maybe let's just even say he's like the 12th guy, depending on who it is. So I'm a little skeptical that they do that, but certainly if there's an injury, we'll see what happens over the next 3 weeks. Like they could pivot in a different direction, but I actually think Maxi and Bronny are the two guys who would make the most sense to me, because Maxi's an expiring, and then Bronny also has a team option. So I believe they could ignore that. Now, I do not see Bronny being waived, and frankly, I don't see Maxi being waived, but I'm just talking through like the options that would make the most sense just from a contract perspective, because you could say, I mean, like Vando's got 2 more years left, right? So you'd have to pay that. So you can't just like waive people without factoring in. And then, as I think someone mentioned waiving DA last time, but DA's got a player option. So because of that, you'd still be on the hook for DA's player option next year. So there isn't really anyone to waive outside of it. I think realistically like Maxi, but Maxi's playing well, and I don't think you cut that. Trev Gamer, thank you for the super chat. Mavs Maxi 36% from 3, Sans rookie year rotation player. I mean, I like Maxi overall. Like I think I think the big thing with Maxi this year has just been he's looked physically cooked, and there's been times where he's just not been able to finish around the basket or the lateral quickness. He just looks like, for a lot of the season, he's looked like a player who's probably on his way out of the league and like on his last legs. But the games that he has played well and he's been effective. It's just, I think now like he's starting to put together, it's getting closer to 50-50 in terms of like positive games versus kind of meh games. And maybe it's even, I'd have to really go through his game logs and like think about each game to really give you a better breakdown of that. But the actual Maxi, I've been a fan of Maxi throughout his career, going back to the Dallas days, like the switchability with him. And I think like when they would play the Clippers, I think he would do a really solid job against Kawhi, but then also the 3-point shooting, like stretch big who can also switch defensively. That's a very valuable commodity. So if he can somehow get the shot back, that even is another reason to play him even more. So I think you just got to stay healthy and got to keep like the pop, because I think there's been some more pop lately, but if he can do that, he's a valuable piece. Jay, thank you for the super chat. I think safe signing Highsmith 29 coming off surgery and Bufkin young high with high ceiling. Can the Lakers sign Tari in free agency and target Herb. So I think you're saying it's safer to sign Bufkin because he's younger with the higher ceiling compared to Highsmith, who's 29 coming off surgery. You can make that argument. They're also just different players, right? Like Kobe Bufkin is, I would classify him more as like a shooting guard. Highsmith is more of a three, who I just did a breakdown of him a couple streams ago, talking about he's played a lot. The last couple of years, he's been more like 50-50 between the 3 and the 4, but for his career, I think he's played like 55% of his minutes at the 4, 45 at the 3. So just different player archetypes. I think Highsmith is more proven, right? And I think it's more of a win now or just playoff ready type player compared to Bufkin. But I like Bufkin longer term. So I'm not against them signing Kobe Bufkin. I do wonder if there's like a little bit of an opportunity cost depending on what happens in the buyout market, but maybe they end up pivoting again and waiving someone or something. I don't know. Maybe they do eat someone's contract and just stretch it. Like it's certainly possible. I just don't think it's a prudent way to approach your cap situation. And then can they sign Tari Eason in free agency? Yes. Will the Rockets match? That's an entirely different question. I think Tari Eason, to even get in the ballpark of potentially signing him away, I think you're going to have to get into the mid to high 20s. I think he's going to make a lot of money this summer. I do think he's more realistic than Walker Kessler or Peyton Watson. I think both of those guys are going to be 25 to 30 million range. I've heard that 30 million-ish could be where Kessler's number is, depending on a couple factors. But Watson and Kessler, I'm less optimistic on. Tari Eason, I think you could probably steal from Houston, but again, he's not gonna come cheap. You're not getting him for 15 million. You're not getting him for 18 million. I think he's going to be a mid-20s plus player. Again, assuming like you're going to have to overpay a little bit to poach a player from their team. Otherwise, they're just going to match the offer sheet. And really, like the way restricted free agency goes, it's like teams are rarely signing players to offer sheets because they don't want their cap situation tied up, because the incumbent team could just screw you over for 3 days and be like, we're just going to let this sit. And while it's sitting, your cap space is tied up. It's not like, oh, we signed Tari Eason and now we're going to go sign Peyton Watson, or we're going to go do this trade. And like, it comes down to your cap situation. And once you sign that offer sheet, your cap is now as if you signed that player until the team makes the decision whether to match or not. It might even be a little bit shorter. I don't remember if it's like somewhere between 1 to 3 days with the new restricted free agency. But I like Tari Eason. You guys know how I feel about Herb. I love Herb Jones. I think he's someone that if the Lakers, depending on how the offseason goes, if you have to throw 2 picks on the table or maybe a pick and a protected pick, that's someone that I think could be in play. I don't know that 1 first is going to be enough for him. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But I think with how the offseason is trending, the Lakers are probably going to have to overpay to a degree. I don't think they're going to be getting like for the starting level guys, right? Like you still have to nail the back end of the roster and some of the cheaper pieces, the minimum guys, the exception guys, whatever. But if we're talking like stealing an RFA or trading for someone with people knowing how many picks the Lakers have, I think it's probably going to be a lot of these starting level guys going for 2 picks, and the restricted free agents, you're gonna have to overpay 3 to 5 million, 5 to 7 million, whatever. Like you're gonna have to make it painful enough where the team does not want to match it, because most of the time they just end up matching it and then figuring it out later in terms of if they don't like the player, they don't like the contract, there's still value in just retaining it and then flipping it later. Whereas losing it for nothing, you're just losing that asset. The Lakers says, sorry, meant Beasley. He became unplayable in the playoffs. I mean, he was. Well, now I realized I did like a whole 5-minute thing on Malik Monk versus Luke Kennard. Yeah, Beasley was just didn't shoot the ball well in LA. It's pretty simple. There's not much more to take from that. Like he just didn't play well. Going to go about 15, 20 more minutes here. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. LA should take more risk and buy low. Can't just try to get an established player as a high-level role player. Zubats cost 2 very good first plus a young player. Yes, I agree with you. I think that that's how they should approach a lot of the bench, though, because I don't think you want to. I mean, look, like talent is talent, so I think there are there are scenarios in which you find this underappreciated, undiscovered talent, and they're that good that they start. I just think if we're looking at LA likely needing 3 starting spots this summer, like, and even if, maybe let's just say they keep Rui and they decide, hey, Rui's going to be our starting 4. I've talked about it. Well, I think to really maximize Rui, and especially if you're putting Rui, like, let's just think about this for a second. If you're saying the core of the Lakers starting lineup is Luka, Austin, and Rui, those are your 3 foundation building blocks, and you're trying to fill out the roster around those 3. You need a very specific build of you need a stud rim protector and you need a stud multi-positional wing defender who can ideally guard 1 through 3, if not 1 through 4. And I have said these examples a million times, so I'm sorry for the people who are tired of hearing me make this point, but like, you need Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. You need Chet Holmgren and like Lou Dort or Alex Caruso. You need those types of defenders next to those 3. If that's the starting point for your starting group, like the offense, incredible. You have 2 studs in Luka and Austin, and one of the best catch and shoot players in the league right now in Rui. That's a great starting point offensively. The defensive side, you're in the red. You are starting from a bad place defensively. So, point being, like, you can try and take some risk and find some buy low guys, and that's great. But you do need some level of proven commodities. And like, I thought the Zubats price was very fair. I think Ivica Zubats is a top 5 to 7 center in the league. Still one of the most underrated players in the league. I mean, we see what he does to the Lakers every time he plays them. He kicks their ass. It's just, he's a beast. So to your point, like the prices are going to be expensive, but I think the Lakers are in a position where they kind of have to pay those prices. If you're not going to pay someone in free agency, if you're not going to put the picks on the table for a trade, you're sort of kicking the can down the road again, and no more can kicking. The road is closed. the road is closed. Thou shalt not pass unless you make some big moves. That's the motto of the summer. Miss Optimist, thank you for the super chat. How many % that LBJ stays in LA or goes elsewhere? It's tough to say. It does feel like it's getting close to running its course, and that, I would put it at I think the way I've broken it down, I think there's 3 possibilities here, because the third one that you did not mention is LeBron just retires. And I know it's been hard for some people to grasp, but there's been some kernels of that with some of the comments he's made. And then also the recent report from ESPN that LeBron doesn't necessarily want a retirement tour, and that he might be okay just retiring kind of quietly. And I mean, it's not going to be quiet if LeBron retires. That's going to be a huge deal, but like, just not really even announcing it, and then sort of just whenever the season's over, potentially retiring. So I've typically said, like, in general, I have each one around like a third or so, and slightly different percentages, but it does feel like I would say maybe 30%. I keep going back and forth, but it might even go a little bit lower. I might say like 25% chance he's back. 15% chance, 20% chance he retires, 15, 20, and then let's just say 15. And then I guess a 60% chance he's, so I think him being elsewhere is probably the most, but those percentages feel a little bit off. I might bump it up to like 30% chance he's back, 20% chance he retires, and like 50% chance he's elsewhere. I don't know. It's hard to say, right? I don't have great, like clarity on this. I don't even know if LeBron has made a decision, to be completely honest, and talking to people about it. Like, I think it could go one of the 3 ways. It does seem like with like the Baxter story and just a lot of the stuff that's happened, especially post Westbrook trade, it does feel like the Lakers seem to be indicating they want to start the next era around Luka this summer. So my read is like it is a relatively low chance he's back, but I would also say though, when looking at the options, if they miss out on all the restricted free agents and like the top guys via trade, like the starters that become available, if they don't get those guys, you start looking at like, I mean, LeBron's the top free agent, right? So you might be in a situation where the best course, if you are like running it back or maybe making like one tweak, it still might make the most sense to keep LeBron, just obviously at like a much lower number than he is currently making. But I would say it's more likely than not he's gone. I just, it's tough to put like an exact percentage on it. So Optimus asks expectations for the season, Bufkin helps or not. I think he can help. I think it's dependent on JJ Redick playing him. And certainly right now with Austin Reeves on a minutes restriction, Luka out, you could see some more guard play and that could help. Now, I think about a game like tonight, and I just don't, know how much Kobe would have played. I don't know where he slots in exactly. So it does feel like this is more of a bigger picture, like longer term potential move of just bringing him in, getting a look under the hood and seeing if you feel like he could be a longer term piece. But, because it feels like right now the Lakers have, I talked about it after the Kennard trade, like they've got their top 10. I think Marcus is going to be the fifth starter. Then you got Rui, Jake, Vando, Jackson, Luke. I think those are your 10. I don't see Kobe Bufkin realistically cracking that. So maybe he could be the 11th guy, but then you also have Maxi, who's been playing well the last couple of games. So he could be top 12. And then I think Dalton and Bronny and Adu are probably the three guys out of the rotation entirely. And maybe Kobe gets some play over Dalton, which he did get at when he was on his 10-day. But my expectations for the season, I think the Lakers right now have a little bit of a lead on Minnesota for a top 5 seed. So I think the goal would just be getting as high of a seed as possible. I think they're 3 back of San Antonio in the loss column. I think that's going to be tough to catch, but I think there's a pathway, especially with Denver just lost Jamal Murray tonight and he's supposed to be back. It's not supposed to be a serious thing, but Denver's having a snake bitten season where despite how high I am on them and others are on them, like they just might never actualize this season. And I think the Lakers have a real shot to potentially even be the 3 seed. So you could get the 3. That might be the best case scenario because you avoid OKC until the conference finals, and San Antonio, for as good as they are, they're unproven and they just don't have the playoff experience together. So if you're picking, it's like San Antonio versus Denver, which has a championship core and like probably has their deepest roster, again, assuming they're healthy. Houston, relatively inexperienced together, but like also has KD, and that's just like it's not a fun team to play. They're very physical. And then Minnesota already beat the Lakers and has been in the conference finals a couple times. So like there's no easy option in the West, but you could talk yourself into San Antonio not being like the worst matchup potentially. But hey, we'll see what that looks like on Tuesday before we go there. But I would say expectation for the season, like realistically, would be 50 plus wins. Would be nice. Top 4 seed would be nice. And I think this group's looking like either a first round exit or a second round exit. So I guess through that lens, like maybe make the second round and have a competitive series against OKC, San Antonio, or Denver, and then reshape the roster in the summer. That would probably be my realistic expectations. Arno De Capo, thank you for the super chat. Pelinka said, me and Jeannie a couple times, I don't think Mark trusts Pelinka over Freeman or his people. I hope Mark has his trusted people take over. I touched on that during the Rob part, that Rob said that a couple times. And I thought that was interesting just because it indicates that he and Jeannie continue to be the primary brain trust here, or at least the primary decision makers. And I know some fans are not going to want to hear that, but that seems to be the way that things are. And that's why, like, I know people have been on Rob's neck and have been on my neck for not saying like, to fire him or whatever. And it's just like, I continue to hear nothing but like he's in charge, and that's not going to change at any time soon. So I think this is the reality that we are operating with. So I think it's got to be about how can he be better? How can he do a better job? How can they build the right infrastructure around him? And it's like, if he's going to be the one in charge, he's going to be the one in charge. But I think the Lakers could certainly do a better job supporting him and building out the front office. LA for life. Thank you for the super chat. Wade Bronny signed to two-way sign buyout. That is technically an option. You make less money on a two-way. So, I mean, I guess I don't know how this would work. And I don't know the rules with waiving a player, then signing them on a two-way. I don't know if he would get his money. I don't know how that, I would assume he would get his money. So maybe he actually gets more money by also like getting his guaranteed money plus the two-way money. I don't know the answer to that. That could be a path. I mean, if they waive Bronny, like that's I think that's a pretty good sign that the LeBron situation has run its course. I don't think LeBron or Clutch would like that, right? Now, again, maybe to your point, there's an agreement where it's like we're going to waive him, then sign him to the two-way and keep him on board. But I don't see that happening. Is he a real one? Thank you for the super chat. Aside from the Russ trade that was pushed by Braun, Rob's made good moves except for always waiting. Waiting is also part of Russ trade because folks knew we had to trade him. Should Rob get more grace? Yeah. Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack here because like, yes, Braun and Clutch did push for the Russ trade, but as the GM at the time and also with ownership, like, I mean, stars push for things and the Lakers were very close on a Buddy Hield trade with Sacramento. Like I've talked about this before, but people in Sacramento, they already had the press release ready. They were acting as if they were doing that trade with the Lakers. And then the Lakers at the 11th hour and 59th minute decided to pivot and go do the Russ trade. So LeBron can push for, I mean, they've pushed for other things. They pushed for De'Aaron Fox. They pushed for Zach LaVine. They pushed for DeJounte Murray. They pushed for Kyrie. And the Lakers did not do it. And now, I think that was post-Russ trade. Things were different. But like, just because your star pushes for something doesn't mean you have to do it. And we've seen that countless times. And I'm sorry, but under no circumstance did the Russ trade ever make any sense. And anyone saying otherwise is not being honest, because I was critical of it the second it happened. And I felt like a madman because everyone was praising it. They added an MVP. They added an all-star. And I was like, this is the worst basketball fit of any third star you could add to LeBron and AD. You're adding a guy who cannot shoot next to them. It just makes no sense. But I digress. You're going to get me down that road. I would disagree with he only makes good moves. I think he's made a lot of good big moves, right? Technically, the AD trade. Well, I mean, the AD trade was already ready, but like he did that. Russ trade will put to the side, but like the Luka trade, of course. I think promoting Austin, from a two-way guy to the roster, like there's been some. I think trading out of the Russ situation, having the patience to wait that out and get the return that he got. I think the DFS trade was a nice move, and then also following that up by knowing when to depart from DFS. But I mean, you're conveniently leaving out the Alex Caruso situation, which was a complete botch job of epic proportions that still he should be getting flack for. Of like, the Lakers had one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA on their roster, and they let that dude walk for THT when they could have kept both of them. They framed it as an either or thing, which even if it was an either or thing, then you should have picked Caruso, but they could have kept both. There's been there's been a lot of like, we're going to do this, and then they just don't do it. Like 2024, we're going to have 3 picks in the summer. They didn't flip any of the picks. I think he's missed a lot of like the Jordan Goodwin situation, drafting Dalton and JHS. Like I don't want to go down the road of all the mistakes, but like I think there are a lot of mistakes that you are like they've had a revolving door of like terrible backup centers for years. It's basically since the second, the title defense season, their backup centers have all been awful. Like Jackson popped last year, but then they ended up trading AD. So that Jackson was the only center. It's been rough. They've not had a 3-and-D wing for almost 5 years outside of like a month of Max Christie. It's just, they've had some real misses here. So I do agree that like maybe you should get like I don't know. I don't know that I agree with this. I think like there have been some real wins and I feel like people sometimes ignore the wins, ignore the hits. So from that perspective, I would give some grace there, but I think there's also been a lot of misses, and frankly, like this group has had 3 issues consistently for the last 5 years. They're not deep enough. The center spot outside of AD has been pretty rough, and they have not had two-way perimeter players. Like and every time they try to find a two-way perimeter player, it just does not work. So I think they've not built modern rosters over the last few years. So I would push back on this, to be honest. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. I was working on a 2026 offseason plan. How would you feel if I told you that going into next season, the starting 5 would be something like Luka, AR, Herb, John Collins, Sharp, and Mitch Robb? Other would be backup. I think that's relatively realistic, and I think that's certainly a better, or it's a better balanced starting 5 than they currently have. Now, I think for all the people who want LeBron gone, right, and there seems to be a lot of them, the Lakers going from having LeBron as either the second or third best player, right? You can debate. I mean, I think on the totality of the season, Austin has been better than LeBron, but LeBron has had some great stretches of the season, has been playing. I mean, he made the All-Star team. Like, you could debate that, whatever. Put either one at 2 versus 3. The drop off to then saying like Herb Jones is maybe the third best player of the team, I don't think it would be John Collins. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's Sharp or Mitch Robb. So I guess it depends what the bench looks like here, but it's a pretty big drop off from top end talent. Now, the roster should ideally be deeper and more versatile and flexible and all that. So that would be nice. But if that's the starting group, again, it's tough to evaluate this without knowing what the bench looks like. But John Collins is an athletic 4 who does have some defensive limitations, but is turned himself into a good shooter, solid rebounder, very athletic, can be a lob threat for Luka. My one thing with Sharp and Mitchell Robinson, I think there's a little bit of overlap there with like their style of play, and I don't think either one is like the Luka big from like a lob threat perspective. Like Sharp is definitely more athletic and better offensively than Mitchell Robinson, but he's not. I still think you need one springy rim running center. That's why I was on board with Nick Claxton as like, a better version of Jackson Hayes. But that would be my one. I mean, now maybe you go small a lot and John Collins ends up playing the 5 and like, it's like Collins, Vando, Herb, although that spacing can be a little rough there. But yeah, I mean, I would want to know who's off. Like, is it Rui? Is it Marcus? Is it, I assume Vando and Jake, because they're under contract, are still there. But I would like one more athletic center option between the two. And one of these guys, like, I would like one of these guys as the 2 centers. I just would probably like a more athletic complement to that. But I think this is a relatively realistic outcome here. And again, like while I like that starting group more than the current starting group, you're still looking at like, I don't think that's on the level of OKC, San Antonio, Denver, but with that group. Jeffrey, thank you for the super chat. Kennard has talent. He was the right-handed All-State QB in high school. Now he's one of the top left-handed three-point shooters. He can help us. Yeah, the ambidextrous ness of his game stands out with the finishing around the basket, the layups, the footwork, and whatnot. Did not know that about the All-State QB background. I did know that he passed. I believe he passed LeBron for the all-time leading scorer in Ohio State history. But yeah, I think I like it, and he can help. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. So sounds like after Kobe, this is the roster, no more. I'm still early in the process here, but in terms of trying to intel dive on this, but tentatively, yes. There's not an obvious wave candidate right now, so I would say for now it's looking like this is likely the roster. Then Norma Maldonado Buha, aka Mama Buha. Shout out to my mom. Hi, late night gang. Thanks for being here, Mama Buha. Love it. And thank you for staying up late. It's past your bedtime. Is he a real one? Veda. Thank you for the super chat. I'm critical of Rob. I just think he's criticized without nuance. He's made plenty of bad moves. I just think he's made more good ones than acknowledged. So this is a follow up to your previous one. I mean, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair pushback. I also think like right now with the fan base, you're just not going to get a lot of nuance with Rob, and people wanted this group to be invested in. People wanted them to make a win now move. It didn't happen. So a lot of people are angry, and I totally understand that. I think my biggest thing where some of the nuance goes out the window is I just think there's been a lot of empty promises with like what they're going to do with the roster. And they have sat out 4 of the past 6 trade cycles. And even this trade cycle was like, okay, they made a small move, whatever, that was sort of the minimum that they could do. I just think there was like a lack. We talked about this. Andy and I spoke about this on our show together, but I think like the reality of the situation was that they gave up on the LeBron AD era, and they sort of soft quit on that era. And it just had the Lakers in this odd purgatory where they were good, but not good enough to win the title or really go on a super deep playoff run. Like they had the one conference finals appearance, but they got their asses kicked by the Nuggets. I mean, it was a close sweep, but it was still a sweep. They could not even close out a game in that series. And that group was just not close to winning a championship, and they decided to run it back. And then they lost in the first round, and then they ran it back again. And then they finally did some tweaks with the DFS trade and then ultimately the Luka trade, but they sort of wasted multiple seasons there. And I mean, it somehow led to them getting Luka, which I think Rob deserves credit for that. I don't think you could chalk it up to like some master plan that he had this vision in the offseason that they were going to somehow get Luka. Like that was not how this went. But yeah, I mean, I would say in general, he probably gets a little bit more flack than he should. But again, I also think that there have been some consistent blind spots that are pretty important when you just think about like, I think the depth of the roster has been a real issue for multiple years, and the lack of two-way play. Like this is just, I mean, if you look at it, I think the last year the Lakers finished top 10 in both offense and defense was the title year. Not even the title year. They're actually outside, I think, of the top 10. Like it's been a long time, but they were at least close to title year, the title defense year. I think it was actually the defense, they were second. I think offense, they were once again outside the top 10, but they just had too many one-way rosters. And I think that like the draft misses and some of the free agent misses, I do think add up. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. Brian taking up a roster spot is convo avoided. I mean, I've brought it up. I think that you could, I mean, objectively, like that's probably the the most obvious waiving player, right? Just like if we're comparing him versus Maxi, like Maxi has contributed more to the season. I just think is right now a better player and a more playoff ready player. But I don't see the Lakers going there. Could be wrong, but I just don't see it. All right, going to go 5 more minutes. Emmy says, how much would they have to pay for Watson and Kessler? 25 to 30 million for Watson and 30 to 35 million for Kessler. Also, would it be better to try and sign and trade for them and move on if they can't? I think those are probably relatively realistic ranges for those guys. 25 to 30-ish million for Watson and 30 to 35 for Kessler. Kessler's going to be expensive. I'm fully on board with Kessler, so I'm fully on board with both guys. I would pay that price for either guy, but I think that's probably accurate, where I think 30 is probably the floor for Kessler starting out in terms of, we're talking like a range where you could poach them. We're not talking about what they're ultimately going to sign, but I think once you get to the $30 million range, Utah has to at least consider it. For Denver, I think 25-ish, but maybe even a little bit higher, because I think Peyton Watson's probably their 4th best player after Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. And I think they're going to shift their priorities now to keeping him and finding a way to either flip Cam Johnson or Christian Brown. And to the last point here, yes, I think this is a possibility of sign and trading for those guys and offering some draft compensation. So maybe it is, that's a part of the restricted free agency pursuit that we haven't talked about yet. But that's where maybe Tari Eason might be the most realistic again, where you're just like, hey, Houston, give us a little bit of a break on the salary, but we will trade you a first for Tari Eason. And you get him maybe like a little bit less than you'd have to overpay for him, and then you have to give up the first. But I mean, that's the position the Lakers are in, because again, there's not like these great free agents out there that it'd be one thing if the free agent class was deeper or better, but they either are going to have to overpay for a restricted free agent or overpay on the trade market, most likely. Even if some guys pop up that are available, I don't think they're going to like get them at a discount necessarily. So could be wrong on that, but I think they're going to have to overpay one way or the other, and that likely comes in the form of both money and draft capital. Tali Khalifa, thoughts on Drew Timme as the 3rd center or 13th, 14th man for the next 2 to 4 years? I would say I'd be open to it. Depends on the first 2 centers. I think my current issue right now with the center group is I just don't think they're good enough defensively, especially with a larger sample size with DeAndre Ayton. I think his defense has really slipped. Jackson is like, I would say okay to slightly above average for like a backup 5, but like I think it's arguably the weakest point of the Lakers roster defensively, which is saying something, because they also they really need point of attack and wing defense as well. But as we've seen, Marcus and Jake and Vando and I guess those 3 guys in particular, but also more recently like Maxi, they've got some versatility with some of, I mean, Maxi's, I guess, is a center, but I don't think he's going to be a full-time center necessarily. And if he is, he's more of a backup. But I think if they got Walker Kessler, for example, or they got Nick Claxton or something, I'd be more cool with Drew Timme. If it's still like they're not really investing in the position, I'm a little bit nervous, because for as good as Timme has been in his flashes and as good as he is offensively, he's clearly limited defensively. And I think the Lakers, I mean, this is maybe a hot take, but like I think they should try to avoid adding defensive liabilities to a team that's already relatively limited defensively. So I think it just depends on the context of the roster. But if the context makes sense, yes, I'm open to Drew Timme. I like him. K9 says Denver can't match a big offer sheet. That's why I'm talking about them trading. They'd probably potentially have to trade dump Cam Johnson or Christian Brown. Tommy Gold says Denver has to choose between Watson and Brown. Yes, and I would say in that case, I think you pick Watson. All right. Any final questions before? Oh, here's is he a real one? Thank you for the super chat. Sure could use a Jordan Goodwin right now. Yeah, that's another. It's another thing. I think I got a moth behind me. That's a nice way to close the show. Couple of super chats here, and I will close with these. DJJ, punting on this much top end talent just to go into an offseason with the same quality of role players available as the past summer, early season is catastrophically stupid. Rob is a not going to say the word. This is the downside. This is the counter argument to the Lakers' approach is that I think their ability to acquire players is certainly going to, like, the optionality, the buzzword of the organization is going to increase, but it's still going to require them to spend in some form, whether that's using that money to overpay to poach players or using the picks on the trade market, right? So you're still going, like, you still have, I think, some relatively limited options, and they're going to be expensive options. So in their defense, I will say, I just looking at the trade market and how things played out, I don't see where the first round pick for player X was for like a certain caliber of player. Like, I don't know who the full-time future starter was that could have been had for a first round pick. But I also think putting all your eggs in the basket of this upcoming summer is pretty dangerous and risky. And I'm not saying they can't pull it off, but there's just a lot of pressure for them to pull it off. Jeffrey, thank you for the super chat. Any chance new ownership can pull Presti from OKC, offered to double his salary? He makes less than Rob. Is kick the can Pelinka nearing his end? I do not think he is nearing his end, despite I know how a lot of the fan base feels right now. I think there's a chance they could pull Presti, but it's gonna take the Godfather. Like, you cannot reject it offer. And I also, like, my understanding is I think the changing of the front office is under Rob. So you don't obviously acquire or sign, you don't poach Sam Presti to be under Rob, right? Like, Sam would be above Rob, but then that's a whole other conversation. So I don't see it happening, but for it to happen, I would think you'd have to make it just an offer he couldn't refuse. Blue Mako asks Luka's MVP chances. I think assuming he's not out too long here with this hamstring strain, I think they are increasing because you have Shea now who's going to be out for a bit. Jokic obviously missed a bunch of time and can only miss one more game to keep his eligibility. So, I mean, if they're like, I think if Jokic misses 2 more games, he's out. That's a big player off the board. And then Shea, I think his MVP case is going to take a hit to some degree with him missing some time. That's just kind of how this goes. But obviously Luka is now missing some time, so maybe his takes a hit as well. This is a weird year. Like, it would be really weird for like Cade Cunningham or Jaylen Brown to win MVP, but like, that's kind of in play. I don't think that should be the case. I think that would be a weird, MVP season, but it's kind of the reality with the new missed games rule of you just miss a certain amount of games and you're automatically out of it. But I think Luka's MVP, he just won Player of the Month for January. So like, Luka had an incredible January. He's been playing great. It's unfortunate he's going to miss some time here, but I think he has a real shot to win MVP. With all that said, I'm going to wrap here. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. That time of the night. We've been going for a couple hours here. I will be back on Monday with Lakers Collective, as well as a post-game show after the Lakers-Thunders game. That'll be a fun one, even with OKC shorthanded and LA likely shorthanded without Luka. Still a nice test, and OKC's playing at a high level. So looking forward to that one. But appreciate you guys. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Lakers signed a 15th player. Roster is full for the foreseeable future, but we'll see if any other buyout guys emerge and maybe they end up pivoting in a different direction. But appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings, and I will talk to you all on Monday.